Oh, hello there. This is Katie with Eyesight Design, and I am here today with Leah Buley from Intuit. Leah is a design strategist at Intuit, where she works mostly on the future of business and personal finance. And she's a catalyst in the industry for spreading the reach of user experience in organizations. And she even just wrote a book on it that just came out a week or two ago, I believe, right, Leah?
A week, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And the book is called A UX Team of One, which is a research and design survival guide. So we're here with Leah today to get to know her a little bit better and hear about what her session will be about at Delight and talk a little bit about the book. So Leah, great to chat with you today.
Thanks. Great to chat with you too, Katie. I'm excited to be having this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess first, just to give the audience a little bit of background, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you recently were at Adaptive Path before you were at Intuit. So if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to Intuit now.
Yeah, that sounds great. So my name is Leah Buley. I live in San Francisco, and I have been making digital products in one form or another for about 15 years. As you mentioned, I work now at a company called Intuit, which makes personal and sort of small business financial software. And I have a really fun job there that I love. I get to work basically on future-oriented projects for that company, so it's really, really interesting. Prior to that, I was a consultant, a user experience consultant for a company called Adaptive Path, which is a kind of pioneering user experience firm in the field. That was an amazing experience. Before Adaptive Path, though, I basically was in a variety of organizations, large and small, as a user experience team of one, which basically meant that I was, in a lot of cases, the only person either on my team or even in the whole organization who had ever even heard of user-centered design or who thought that it mattered. And so I spent a lot of years doing that, and I actually started my career in UX actually not as a user experience practitioner at all, but as a kind of opinionated front-end developer many years ago, kind of writing HTML and ASP and PHP and stuff like that. So I feel like I came to UX through kind of a roundabout way, and that's a lot of kind of what inspired me to write the book, and that's kind of some of what I'll be talking about at Delight.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about how you discovered user experience, and how is it that you realized the importance of user experience as a front-end developer?
Yeah. Well, so I think when I started out, I was kind of a hack actually. I started writing code when I was in college in the late 90s, and I basically, what I loved about kind of doing web development at the time was that you get to, like, 50% of the work is kind of messing around in code, and that's fun, but then the other 50% of the work is designing the thing and figuring out what it's going to be, and that's really fun too. And then as I started to actually work in the field as a front-end developer, I realized that because of the specialization of roles, all that fun designing stuff I didn't get to do anymore because I was the coder. And so I was really curious about people with these titles like information architect and interaction designer, and kind of what credentials they had in a way that qualified them to do that work when I didn't necessarily have the qualifications to do that work. And what I realized was that there's more to user experience than just knowing how to use a tool like Photoshop or Visio, which is kind of how I had been doing that design work. So by watching the information architects and the interaction designers and the visual designers in the company that I worked in, I realized they actually had a whole extra set of skills and capabilities that were about understanding user needs, and that enabled them to be more informed about what the right design decision was. And I just started to feel like, damn it, I want to know how to do that. That's a role that I want to be able to play too. So I eventually decided to go back to school, and I got a master's in library and information science with an emphasis in information architecture. And there I just got really deep into kind of HCI questions and usability questions, and how you structure really complex information spaces, and then how do you actually validate that those spaces make sense to people. So that was sort of how I turned the corner into getting into the field. But mostly I was just sort of jealous. I wanted to do what the design people were doing. So that's kind of how I started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does seem fun, and so I can see that need to want to explore. So, what exactly is a design? What exactly is a UX team of one?
Yeah, it's a good question. It sounds like it's like you have to be working by yourself in a basement or
on an island, yeah.
something or an island. I think you're a UX team of one if you basically find yourself in a position where you're on a cross-functional team and other people on your team have their responsibilities, and you're the only one who really is responsible for bringing a user-centered design point of view into the work. And maybe it's not even your official job title, and maybe it's just that you are the only person who's thinking about that. So certainly if you're in a company that doesn't actually have any like official UX kind of titles, and you're the one who is kind of advocating most strongly for that kind of user-centered design point of view, then you're a UX team of one. But even if you're in a company that actually has, you know, a robust user experience practice and where there's general interest and support for the idea of user experience, if you're working on a product and you are, you know, you're the one who's doing kind of the front-end prototyping and the wireframing and a little bit of user research, and other people have different goals that aren't related to user experience, you are really the one who's trying to evangelize for the user point of view, and that requires special skills and a special perspective, which makes you, in my book, a UX team of one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It is a unique challenge. What would you say some of the more subtle challenges of being a UX team of one would be?
Yeah, I think the real trick, and maybe so I'll reflect on my own personal experience, and people watching can decide if this resonates with them. What I found when I was working in situations where I was starting to learn more about user-centered design, and I was trying to get people to support the idea that we should do user research, and I was trying to get people to think about why we made the decisions we were making in the user interface. What I found was that half the time I was trying to convince my colleagues that there is such a thing as user experience, that it really matters, and that we will have a better resulting product if we take the time to do certain kind of types of work in that area. So that was kind of this almost like need to convince and evangelize and build belief that this practice even matters. And then that was happening at the exact same time that I was trying to advance my own skills and didn't exactly fully know myself how I could quickly do user research that would teach us important things, or how I could quickly throw together some wireframes that would be any better than what we had today. So there's this sort of parallel need to convince others of the importance of the field while you're also trying to build your own skills, and it creates a kind of funny tension. I think that's actually the real kind of meat of what a UX team of one is trying to struggle with every day. And the philosophy of the book, and what I found worked for me personally, was that when I started to become more transparent about the UX process, it kind of solved both problems. It brought people into the work of user experience and helped my non-UX colleagues sort of see the value of upfront user research and see the value of doing user-centered design. And at the same time, I actually ended up doing better work because I had more people involved and more smart minds sort of working on a problem. So that's the sort of the secret sauce in the whole book, the UX team of one, and it goes into a lot of different methods for how you can work in that way. But that sort of subtle tension between, like, you need to be the expert and you also are trying to build your expertise simultaneously is really kind of what it's all about.
Right, right. And it's kind of a unique angle, you know, because you don't want it to seem like it's the blind leading the blind necessarily,
right.
You know.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, you want people to feel confident that what you're bringing is not just like just a little experimental approach, but that it's actually going to be worth the time and the effort. So that really makes facilitation skills and the ability to listen and to be persuasive and to attract people to the cause of user experience just as important as being able to do a good research interview or sort of know how to do good wireframes. So that's I think like the other half of the work, and it's a really tricky, and I think it's really important. And so again, like that's a big part of what I talk about in the book, is how you can be a more confident facilitator of the user experience process in a way that doesn't make people feel like you're just like experimenting on them. You know.
Right, right. Yeah, I guess which kind of leads right into my next question, which was, you know, how does your specific approach kind of provide a more practical and like fresh perspective for user experience teams of one?
Yeah. Well, it's basically, it's more of a mindset shift than anything else, and so what I recommend in the book is to look at the overall user-centered design process and try to figure out how you can adapt it in a couple of specific ways for your organization. One way to adapt it that I kind of emphasize is to make it more collaborative and cross-functional. So essentially make it a process that has a place for engineers in it, that has a place for product managers and QA folks and marketers and sales, and everybody who has a point of view about the product gets invited into the process. So that's one kind of important principle. Second principle is to look at the overall process and figure out how it can be made self-documenting. And what I mean by self-documenting is that what you make together as a group when you get this cross-functional team together becomes the foundation for what you do next. It doesn't get like reinterpreted by you through the lens of design. So that's super important because number one, it's more efficient, but then number two, it means that the whole team walks away with a shared picture in their minds of what's been agreed to, and that ends up making an easier process to facilitate. And then the third principle is to make the UX process something that enables and facilitates prioritization and discussions about really like trade-offs that you're making. So how do you, as a facilitator of user experience, get a cross-functional team involved in the making of things together that are self-documenting that then ultimately help that whole group of people say, yes, we're going to do this, and no, we're not going to do that, and we all understand and agree why that's happening. So those sort of three basic principles, what I do is I sort of revisit the whole UX process with those principles in mind, and then show how you can approach a lot of different methods that we typically do today with those goals in mind, and sort of turn them on their side a little bit and accomplish them in a slightly different way. And so that's the second half of the book. Is just a big almost like compendium of methods. There's 27 methods, 1 through 27. They go all the way from kind of planning and discovery, all the way through design and sort of testing and validation, and even into kind of like looking ahead at what needs to come next. And they all have that kind of angle applied to them.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to reading it. Actually, we didn't order it until like last week, so unfortunately I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet. But I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool. I'm psyched. I'd love to hear what you think of it once you have a chance to read it. I'm eager to hear feedback. So cool.
Yeah. So I was actually reading the introduction post that you gave at the beginning of the whole process, and I know you were kind of soliciting like feedback and stories from other practitioners out there. So what kind of reception did it have? What kind of stories were you hearing from people out there?
Yeah, tons of them actually. So many people were amazing. They came forward and sort of shared what they were going through, which was extremely just educational and heartwarming and inspiring all at the same time. One thing that I think really kind of hammered home for me the value of this book was that there are so many people in such a variety of situations who came forward, and it's not a. I mean, the reality is, I think companies that never before would have thought that they were in the user experience business are starting to have people within those companies who are saying, okay, I want to help make our products more user friendly. So that was, I think, really interesting to see. A lot of people, I think, struggling with, it's that kind of age-old question of how to get a seat at the table and get permission to kind of be in the UX process. One of the things that I saw when I was talking to people was that there's still a lot of struggle really just to get permission to do UX work, period, bar none. And so specifically to get people to be willing to take the time to actually conduct user experience research and tend to look at the data that comes out of that. So a lot of people still dealing with that situation. And now increasingly a lot of people trying to figure out how to help their companies look across sort of devices and channels and think about user experience as still a thing that they're trying to solve in a harmonious way across all these different touch points. I think you find increasingly that there's pockets of sensitivity to UX within organizations, but that they're at a higher level, there's still people not sort of thinking broadly across all that stuff. So it's definitely a messy and complicated landscape for UX professionals. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's amazing just to see how many of us there are and how many of us are kind of working on these same problems together. So it's pretty heartwarming.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about designing for delight.
Yeah.
You mentioned that a minute ago, actually. So.
What is it?
Yeah, what is it?
You want, yeah, okay. So so the company I work for now, Intuit, is it's really interesting. They have a very deliberate way of approaching innovation work, and it involves a couple of different pieces. It's definitely one of these companies that has like your 10% time where everybody can work on kind of innovative problems for 10% of their week. But one thing that they've done specifically to try to help improve the delightfulness of all of our products is they've instituted a program called the Design for Delight program. D for D is what we call it for short. And basically D for D is our own internal language for design thinking at Intuit. And the whole concept is that there's a set of kind of principles that underlie design thinking practices, and those principles have been taught to basically everybody in our organization. And in particular, there's a couple hundred people who've actually been trained as catalysts of those principles. We call them the innovation catalysts. And the innovation catalysts are embedded throughout the organization in a bunch of like places you wouldn't think. There are innovation catalysts in human resources and in finance, and in like there are administrative assistants who are innovation catalysts. It's not just for designers or for product teams even. It's really considered a kind of problem-solving skill that anybody in the organization should have. So the innovation catalysts are there as kind of coaches to help any team that's stuck or working on a problem to apply design thinking methods to that problem. And it's so great. The principles that the catalysts sort of base their work on are exactly the same principles that UX designers base their work on, and that UX teams of one should base their work on. And it's these three principles. One is rapid experimentation. So to try out problems and experiment with them quickly to learn from them. Another is deep customer empathy. So know who this thing is for and actually like have real encounters with that person so you really understand what they're trying to do. And then the third principle is we call it go broad to go narrow. The idea being that it's like the generative design process, that like before you fall in love with one solution, explore a lot of different solutions and then come back in and then go back out and come back in. So these three simple sort of principles basically are, they're shared through this like 8,000 person company, and there are people who are really just tasked with making sure that they get applied in problems big and small every day. And it's just been really amazing to see how Intuit as a company has embraced that stuff. It's cool. And so when I came to Intuit and I saw that was going on, I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost like everyone's a team of one. They're all empowered to do some of these same sort of facilitative kind of design thinking approaches. So I feel like it's so perfect and natural that I ended up at Intuit, because I feel like Intuit's about the same things that I value and write about in my book, but they're doing them at scale in a really large and complex corporation. And that's, I think, a bit of what I'd love to talk about at Delight, which is just like this notion of how you work as a facilitative kind of sort of leader of good design. That can work if you truly are the only person in your organization who gives a damn about this stuff, and it can also scale all the way up to some pretty surprisingly large places. So that's, I think, interesting.
Yeah, that's spectacular. I mean, so much of what Delight has always been about is just getting those brands that kind of share that same belief. So that's great that you found a brand that like resonates with you and the same values that you had anyways all along. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel thankful. I feel extremely thankful. It's cool. It's a good company, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to hear your session. What are you looking forward to at Delight?
There's a lot of things I'm looking forward to. Right out the gate, Aaron Walter, I'm super curious to hear about, just because number one, MailChimp does amazing stuff, but also his book, Designing for Emotion, is really relevant to what we're talking about right now at Intuit. Our next kind of nut to crack is we're trying to figure out how to help project teams and product teams kind of connect to the emotional sort of pain that they're solving, and then what emotional state they're actually trying to create for customers. So I'm really eager just to hear what he has to say about that. And also the woman from Starbucks, Dana Cruz, super curious about her talk. I just think the Starbucks mobile app is so fascinating on so many levels. It's got really interesting kind of commerce disruption built into it, and it's such a fantastic customer experience, and it upsets a lot of the categories of what we think about as a mobile app. So I'm really curious to hear about that process too. So yeah, those are my two top choices right now, I would say. But yeah.
Awesome. Have you been to Portland before?
I've been to Portland. I've never been to Delight. I'm really excited. I think Portland is maybe like my second favorite West Coast city, actually. Don't tell Los Angeles that, but yeah, I love Portland. It's an awesome town.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really looking forward to actually meeting you in person, and I hope you do enjoy the event. And there's just a spectacular lineup of other people I know that, are looking forward to meeting you. So thank you so much for giving us a sneak peek into your talk, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Oh my gosh, I'm so thrilled to be invited. I can't wait to meet you in person and just to mingle with the whole community. So it's going to be fun, and I'm honored to be invited. So yeah, see you soon.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds great. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.